Hello and welcome back to the Supply Chain Dialogues. My name is Daniel Helmig and I'm joined again by my AI co-host AImee.
Hi, everybody.
It's been quite a few months since we last connected, and during our break, we all have witnessed some profound changes, many of which underscore the urgency of our dialogue here. If we reflect on the last months, we're reminded of nature's unpredictable power. Now more and more it seems to be actually on steroids. From devastating floods that sweep through communities to relentless wildfires that razed landscapes to hurricanes that left trails of destruction, these events have not just been stories in the news. They have been lived and experienced for millions, reshaping lives, homes and futures, and unfortunately not for the better. It is the reason why we moved the focus of this podcast from just optimizing supply chains, organizations and digital setups, and move towards finding ways to deal with the uncomfortable situation where humanity is step by step sliding further into. I don't know about you, but isn't it frustrating that we forget so quickly? Geez, I even have issues remembering what I had for dinner 5 nights ago. So to recall some of the major events that stood out because of their magnitude and the hardship they caused to individuals and the supply chains, we will talk about this today at the beginning. Firstly, the unprecedented floods in South Asia displacing millions and disrupted supply chains on a massive scale. Just to get this into context, this all is simple physics called the 7% rule. For each increase of 1 degree, or approximately 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, the capacity of the air to hold water vapor increases by roughly 7%. This results from the exponential growth in saturation of vapor pressure with temperature. Check it out, it is science. You can even experiment it in your own bathroom. When you turn on the heating and then the shower, look at the developing fog and the later need to clean all the bathroom surfaces due to the condensation. The water is everywhere. Now back to another area, which is the wildfires in South Europe. A stark reminder of how quickly things can escalate. The impact was not confined to burned forests, but extended to the smoke-filled air, affecting health and agriculture, and the livelihood tied closely to seasonal yields that wiped out yields in days. There are now as well people dying due to the heat exposure in their vacation locations, the latest in Greece and Spain. Taking a hike during your vacation was in the past nothing to worry about, unless you walk in Australia's south with flip-flops and got stung or bitten by the highly inhospitable wildlife they have. In North America, just think what happened the other week in Florida and further up. The hurricane season was fierce. Buildings were toppled and power grids were shattered, reminding us of our vulnerabilities in the US. Yet amongst the chaos, it's been heartening to see communities pulling together, adapting supply chain strategies on the fly, to continue providing essentials for the people around. Across the globe, heat waves broke records, stressing energy supplies and highlighting gaps in our preparedness for such extremes. They showed us clearly that more than traditional approaches are required. Lastly, I have to mention the ongoing droughts in parts of Africa. Its prolonged effect has led to food shortages and raised the cost of necessities, pushing humanitarian supply chains to their limits. Let's contrast last year to this year, and AImee, cover a couple of major events that we had last year around the same time, please.
Let's start with Storm Daniel in Libya, September 2023. This Mediterranean cyclone caused catastrophic floods where the collapse of 2 dams led to thousands of deaths, marking one of the deadliest storms in Africa. The storm also impacted Greece, Bulgaria, and Turkey. Next, the wildfires in Canada and Hawaii in June till September. Record-breaking wildfires ravaged parts of Canada, displacing thousands and severely affecting air quality across North America. In Hawaii, wildfires devastated parts of Maui, with significant loss of life and damage to properties. Or Hurricane Otis in Mexico in October. Otis made landfall near Acapulco, Mexico, with unprecedented strength attributed to rapid intensification fueled by abnormally warm waters. It caused extensive damage to the coastal city. How about the July heat waves in southern Europe, USA, and China? Extreme heat waves brought temperatures over 50 degrees Celsius to parts of the US, China, and southern Europe. This led to heat-related fatalities, infrastructure strain, and severe agricultural impacts. Or the Mediterranean marine heat waves in July until September. The Mediterranean experienced intense marine heat waves, leading to widespread ecological damage, including threats to marine biodiversity and coral reefs. Then we have the Antarctic sea ice record lows in July till September. Antarctic sea ice reached record low extents during the southern hemisphere winter, exacerbating concerns about global ice melt and rising sea levels. Next is Cyclone Biparjoy in India and Pakistan in June. This tropical cyclone caused heavy rains, flooding, and displacements across India and Pakistan, damaging agriculture and infrastructure. We had severe floods in China in July to August. Torrential rains led to devastating floods in northern China, displacing millions and disrupting essential services. As Daniel mentioned, the drought in the Horn of Africa, which is still ongoing. Prolonged drought conditions continue to ravage parts of Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia, causing severe food insecurity and displacing communities. And last but not least, the monsoon floods in India in July till August. Intense monsoon rains triggered floods and landslides, particularly in the northern states, leading to significant fatalities and infrastructural damage.
These events, each with unique challenges and impacts, tell a larger story about our interconnectedness and the ripple effects of these catastrophes across borders. If we would not have said at the beginning that these catastrophes happened last year, you would probably believe as well that they're happening this year, because the news on events in 2024 are just very similar. While the academic and scientific community is clear on the man-made impact on Earth's atmosphere due to the increase of greenhouse gas emissions, meaning it increases the temperature of the climate overall, we so far could not see the impact, since as Homo sapiens we can react to weather but not to climate. Now the local weather lets us flee into shelters, lose our homes, starve, etc. This is happening now. Even if we forget for a moment our main topic, supply chain, let's consider the broader implications of these increasingly brutal events, particularly on migration behavior among affected citizens. Climate-related disasters often force people to relocate, leading to significant shifts in population patterns.
Reports indicate that climate change could displace up to 1.2 billion people worldwide by 2050, igniting a new wave of migration that threatens to strain resources and social structures in host countries.
Unfortunately, this movement of displaced people has coincided with the rising tide of nationalism and populism in many democratic nations. Politicians in several countries have capitalized on immigration fears, using it as a rallying point for their campaigns. For example, the elections in nations like Hungary or Italy showed right-wing parties succeeding by leveraging anti-immigration rhetoric. In France, Italy, Poland, USA, nationalistic, even fascist tendencies are on the rise, so far held at bay through often desperate moves on the other party's side to prevent these people come to power. In this context, I recommend two books: How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley and the book Nexus, a short overview of information networks by Yuval Noah Harari. Harari wrote the other books like Homo Sapiens and Homo Deus. Both books help to understand the consequences we as societies will experience the more external pressure through weather, migration, and other man-made phenomena will be felt on an even individual level. These electoral successes highlight a troubling trend. As migration flows increase due to climate-related events, some political leaders adopt divisive stances that foster intolerance and undermine the principles of compassion and global solidarity, catching the confused and ill-informed electorate, like the story of the pipe piper in Hameln in Germany. This disconnection and accommodating displaced population pose multifaceted changes in industries and governments, particularly in managing supply chains amid increasing uncertainties. Given these experiences, we have to ask ourselves, are we doing enough to anticipate the changes and adapt our systems accordingly? What more can be done through collaborative efforts across sectors? So today's episode will discuss these questions and more, especially how companies and governments might change their ways to tackle such challenges preemptively. A concept central to this is called evidence-based management. I talked about this from time to time, but we will go today a little bit more in detail. It's an insightful approach. In coming episodes of this season, we will take the academic and scientific portion of evidence-based management and give you insights that you can combine with the dimension of internal knowledge, board knowledge, customer and leadership knowledge to reach hopefully better informed decisions for your companies. So let's use this dialogue as an opportunity to reflect, rethink and reshape our immediate days in front of us. I'm very glad that you joined us. Now, with the context we set out before, it's time to get into the crux of the discussion today. The urgent need for transformative change within organizations and governments. These entities are the architects of our present and future landscapes, and their actions or inactions have far-reaching implications on our ability to withstand and bounce back from climate-related and other global challenges. The scale and frequency of the recent climate-related catastrophes have shown us that traditional approaches are no longer viable. We're at the crucial point where incremental fixes won't suffice. A change towards resilience and sustainability being baked into the core of decision-making processes. One essential resource that has informed my thinking is the book Evidence-Based Management by Eric Behrens and Denise M. Rousseau. You will find the details in the show notes. So what is evidence-based management? At its core, it's about integrating the best available evidence into the decisions we make in our organization. Behrens and Rousseau argue that relying on empirical research, organizational data, and practical expertise can significantly enhance our effectiveness as leaders. One of the book's key themes is the importance of using evidence. Well, it's in the title, isn't it? The authors guide us on how to leverage various forms of evidence from scientific studies to professional experience and stakeholder perspectives. This helps us make informed decisions rather than relying solely on intuition or outdated practices. The authors also emphasize critical thinking. Well, who would have guessed, right? It's essential to assess the quality of the evidence at hand, distinguishing between high-quality information and information that might mislead. Here, the concepts explained in the book Nexus are helpful. Harari, the author, differentiates between the naive and educated view on information. This also opened my eyes and let me stand there as rather naive regarding information. I adopted in the past the general concept that information leads to truth, and more information should lead to more truth and, finally, wisdom. However, he points out that information is neutral and does not necessarily lead to truth, but to just a common script that people use to communicate, and that can lead as well just to power. Hence, information in the millions worldwide on the web today is information as well, but not necessarily into the direction of truth and wisdom, but rather in the direction of connection and power. Now, to implement evidence-based management, Behrens and Rousseau provide a decision-making framework to help us implement evidence-based practices effectively. They also discuss common barriers we might face when using evidence in our decisions and offer insights on overcoming them. Lastly, the book highlights the significance of creating a culture within our organization that prioritizes evidence-based practices. It calls for continuous learning and adaptation based on reliable evidence, vital for personal growth and organizational success. In the next part of our podcast, we personalize these insights through a series of, you would have guessed, 10 questions and the respective answers. That's the concept that we use in the dialogues as much as we can, and this will provide practical guidance on how to implement changes effectively, maybe as well in your contexts.
What are the key lessons learned from recent climate events concerning supply chains?
That's a great place to start, as these events have taught us valuable lessons about our supply chain's resilience and adaptability. The first key lesson is the stark vulnerability within global supply networks. The interconnectedness that drives efficiency also means disruption in one region can have cascading effects worldwide. For instance, when floods paralyze a critical transport hub, the ripple effect can delay production schedules and disrupt delivery timelines across continents. Yet, these vulnerabilities also present ground for innovation and process changes. One opportunity lies in the diversifying of supply sources. That's the old story. Many companies have traditionally depended on a narrow base of suppliers to minimize cost. However, recent events underscore the importance of a diversified supplier network to mitigate risks and ensure continuity. Another lesson is the need to employ advanced data analytics and real-time monitoring. By leveraging AI and IoT technologies, companies gain enhanced visibility over their supply chains, allowing them to anticipate disruption and respond proactively. I go so far and say that any company with a diverse supply chain with over just 100 suppliers is foolish not to use modern available technology to monitor their supply base and anticipate potential issues. The days where the CEO or CPO sits at the morning table to read about a flooding and then asking his or her subordinates whether the company might be affected are so 20th century. But as always, survival is optional. Sleep your sleep of comfort until your competition will eat you for breakfast. Moreover, recent climate events have highlighted the necessity for more sustainable practices. Integrating renewable energy sources, reducing waste, and investing in circular economy initiatives might mitigate environmental impact and build resilience against resource volatility. Now, here you have to think more about the impacts that a more resilient supply chain can have on you, since the benefits are indirect at best. Let me point out a few, and leaving the fact out that you could be a hero at your family's dinner table if you can talk about how you personally make a difference. But on the organizational or firm scale, here are some of the other benefits. Long-term savings, enhanced brand image and reputation, compliance with regulations, which means less risk of penalties, access to new product markets, access to governmental funding, access to or retention of capital sources and investors, increased revenue, better return on investment, and an overall improved resilience in competitiveness. Now, granted, these benefits do not magically appear. You have to have people working on them, often across departments, but it isn't that much harder than trying to expand markets, come up and launch new products, etc. You will have to do this anyway, but isn't it much sweeter if you can do the right thing in sustainability and see some dough coming out of this? In essence, while the challenges posed by the climate events are huge, they also give us the opportunity to reimagine supply chain management, getting to systems that are not only efficient, but also resilient and sustainable.
How can companies integrate evidence-based management practices to improve their sustainability efforts?
Integrating evidence-based management into sustainability efforts is about harnessing diverse perspectives and data sources to make informed decisions. We talked about this. Instead of relying solely on instinct or the opinion of the highest paid person in the room, often called the HIPPO, companies should seek input from the wide range of stakeholders, including academia, customers, shareholders, organizational experts, and supervisory boards. For instance, engaging with academia can provide companies access to the latest research and innovative approaches to sustainability challenges. We will put a spotlight on this in one of our next podcasts, reviewing academic papers with huge relevance to your business today. Now, actively consulting with customers offers insight into evolving preferences, ensuring that solutions are practical and market responsive. One of the former companies I worked for had this strategy which cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. They believe, being manufacturing buffs, that customers would love to get their products quicker. So they updated their production processes, shaved everywhere days, hours, even minutes of the whole value chain process. When they, after a few years, implemented Six Sigma, they learned about the voice of the customer concept. So they went out and asked open-ended questions to the customers. And lo and behold, the customers wanted their products not quicker, but only precisely on the date that was promised. This was important because the customers needed to make room at least the day before so that they could utilize the new product and fit it into their home. So this global company wasted millions to answer a question that was never posed. This is not the exception, folks. It is normal, ignorant management behavior. They, based on a few conversations or discussions with their friends and senior consulting buddies, believe they know what the customer wants. They are the HIPPOs. We should not follow blindly, and even more importantly, not becoming one ourselves in the future. Ask, learn, reflect on answers that come from each corner of your stakeholders. Stakeholders include shareholders and supervisory boards. They are vital in aligning sustainability initiatives with broader strategic goals and ensuring that they are financially sound and scalable. Internally, fostering a culture that values input from all organization levels promotes a comprehensive understanding of the challenges and opportunities across the supply chain by everyone in the company. Just ask yourself how your employees regard the internal suggestion processes, if you even have one. 90% of these processes, when they exist, are rubbish, because the employees, based on their experience, see that their proposals are not appreciated. In a company of 100 people, you have 100 extraordinary brains. Use them. Everyone will have their perspectives on solution, based on their specific views of the world and how they look and work in your business. Not utilizing this resource is simply stupid and arrogant on the part of the management. So, by integrating these varied inputs, companies can develop robust, evidence-based sustainability strategies that are resilient, adaptable, and aligned with stakeholder expectations.
What role does technology play in modernizing supply chains for resilience?
Technology is the cornerstone of resilient supply chains in today's environment. At the forefront is digital transformation, which includes implementing advanced data analytics, AI, and cloud computing to enhance supply chain visibility and agility. Emerging technologies such as Internet of Things facilitate real-time tracking of goods, giving companies immediate insights into inventory levels and transit conditions. This capability allows for rapid response to disruptions, such as rerouting shipments in extreme weather conditions, which will happen more and more, let's face it. Blockchain technology also plays a critical role by providing a transparent and immutable ledger of transactions. This not only helps trace the origins of products, ensures sustainability and ethical standards, build customer trust, and reduce fraud. I am still at a loss why so few companies are able to make blockchain work in their value chain. Is it the incompetence of their IT, or the ignorance of the sales or supply chain leaders, or the missing leadership on the management board level? Blockchain and IoT are wonderful enhancements to create transparency and valuable data, but you need to have the antenna for this in the organization to reap the benefits. Next is automation and robotics that have revolutionized logistics by streamlining processes and reducing human error. Warehouses employ automated guided vehicles and drones for inventory management and are seeing increased efficiency and reduced downtime. Still, for this you need people in your organization who have a clue about what automation and robotics can do for you. It's not just about automated guided vehicles if you better use a forklift truck. It is seeing and knowing what the art of the possible is. Looking at academia and science journals gives you the idea to say, this can work for us, and it is actually a benefit. If the cost-benefit analysis is negative, then don't do it, but at least do the analysis. And since we are on analysis, let's talk about predictive analysis, which allows companies to anticipate disruptions in demand fluctuations. This enables better planning and resource allocation, making supply chains more proactive rather than, reactive. This is not longer rocket science. This is the stuff that is out there and being used by leaders in the field. I know of at least 5 software companies in this space that can do magic. And here I use magic as defined by Arthur C. Clarke. He said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Many people in supply chains today do not understand what is possible and still play with their old ERP tools, hoping for better solutions and thinking that everything around that is different might be magic. By integrating these technologies, companies can bolster their resilience to external shocks, drive efficiencies, and enhance flexibility, making their supply chains robust against future uncertainties.
Can you give an example of a company successfully implementing these changes?
Absolutely. Let's take Unilever, a global leader in consumer goods, as we know. Unilever has been at the forefront of integrating sustainability into its business model through evidence-based management practices for some time. Several years ago, Unilever launched its Sustainable Living Plan, which set ambitious goals to improve health and well-being, reduce environmental impact, and enhance livelihoods. What sets them apart is their commitment to data-driven decision-making in achieving these targets. For example, Unilever uses lifecycle assessment tools to measure the environmental impact of their products from raw material sourcing to end-of-life disposal. These insights have allowed them to implement changes like reducing the carbon footprint of their supply chain and ensuring all their agricultural raw materials are sustainably sourced. Moreover, Unilever harnesses technology, particularly data analytics and IoT, to optimize water usage in production facilities and reduce waste. They've also successfully cultivated partnerships with NGOs and governments to promote new innovations and share best practices. This evidence-based and technology-driven approach has not only enhanced Unilever's sustainability efforts, but also improved operational efficiencies, demonstrating that eco-friendly practices and profitability can go hand in hand. Their story is a testament how targeted data-supported strategies can lead to significant achievements in sustainability.
What are the common barriers companies face in adapting to these changes?
While the potential benefits of integrating evidence-based sustainability practices are substantial, companies often encounter several barriers when attempting to implement these changes. One of the primary barriers is, like always, resistance to change. This can arise from a deeply ingrained culture that clings to traditional methods, or from individuals who are hesitant to embrace new approaches due to the fear of the unknown or potential disruptions to their roles. Let's be brutally open here. Implementing an approach like this diminishes the power of the leadership team if they define power by making the decision based on their opinions alone, like most management boards unfortunately do. So we talk HIPPOs here. In addition, for many leaders in the organization, they believe they have enough to do by utilizing input from their own organization processes and systems. Going out there to collect information from all these different stakeholders sounds like a lot of work and leads to delays. In later podcasts, I will talk about how to operationalize at the speed of light analysis of academic papers and science knowledge. So believe me, if you do it right, it is less work than you think and reduces the failure rate of your projects since they are based on a much larger footing. Some of the most successful projects I implemented with my teams in my corporate lifetime were based on a detailed review of what is out there rather than just trusting my little own brain. I was a hippo as well myself. Another common challenge is the initial cost and complexity of adopting new technologies and practices. Although these changes can lead to long-term savings and efficiency, upfront financial and resource investment can be significant hurdles, particularly for smaller companies with limited capital. Here, my advice is divide and conquer. You can as well work with universities and associations that have access to much more advanced tools that you can imagine. Help them by giving students and professors an opportunity to work in your real world, and they will reciprocate. You would be astonished what a bunch of graduate students can dig up today for you if they are properly motivated. Data challenges also play a role. Companies may struggle to gather accurate, comprehensive data to inform decisions and track progress. In some cases, the need for more expertise in data analysis and management further complicates this barrier. But whether you like it or not, either you learn or you wither away. You need people that understand the new technologies, know how to use cloud-based technology, not just for storage, but data mining, insights, and predictions. And yes, they will be younger than you think is possible. But this is just the impact of the massively quick changes that are happening in the digital space. Just think of ChatGPT. It was announced on November 30th, 2022. Not just barely 2 years ago. And many of us still use it more or less like a toy, rather than this incredible instrument for market dominance in our field. To overcome these challenges, we will spend a whole podcast in this season on this topic: how to do the change management of moving from old-fashioned leadership and decision style to an evidence-based management process. And if you Google evidence-based management, you will find a lot of stuff of why it fails. I tell you, this is an issue of proper change management. And when you do it right, you are 1000% better at decisions and implementation than your competition.
How can governments support industries in managing supply chain risks?
Governments play a crucial role in creating an environment where industries can effectively manage supply chain risks. One of the primary ways they can assist is through building partnerships that foster collaboration between the public and the private sector. These partnerships can facilitate sharing critical information, resources, and strategies to enhance supply chain resilience. Moreover, governments can implement policies that support infrastructure development, such as improving transportation and communication networks, to bolster supply chain efficiency and reliability. Policies that standardize risk assessment and management practices across sectors can also help synchronize efforts to mitigate supply chain disruptions. Incentive programs offer another powerful tool. By providing tax credits or subsidies for investments in technology and infrastructure upgrades, governments can encourage companies to adopt more resilient practices. Additionally, supporting research and development in supply chain innovations can lead to breakthroughs that benefit industry collectively. Regulatory frameworks that require or encourage sustainability also push industry towards more resilient practices by integrating environmental considerations into supply chain management. I hear you say, this is all good and well, but look at the reality, Daniel. Many of the world's governments are neither democratically elected nor see the topic we just mentioned as their role. Even democratic governments spend more time and money fulfilling their pet peeves based on their ideological inclinations than working on making it easy for the industry and all of us to get a sustainable future. Based on lobby work for the respective industries and ideological blindness, they promote and subsidize old, harmful carbon fuels. Just look at the subsidies for coal and kerosene in your countries. It's a shame. And then, if other countries with different patterns of governmental support have a leg up, potential importer governments raise the flag of unfair state influence and ask for higher import taxes. It's a joke, since mainly our Western governments just have to let go of subsidizing backward-looking industries and products and focus on innovation. If you subsidize agriculture, for example, you disturb the market powers between farmers and the food processors and wholesalers. In effect, you do not subsidize the farmers but the big box wholesalers, since they know that they can squeeze a bit more, which then leads us, the end consumer, to buy products that make no real economic sense to produce. The market cannot regulate itself, and billions of dollars or euros are misused instead of promoting e-mobility, renewable energy and storage, and helping to change buildings to be, for example, climate neutral. Governments should be the good guys who look out for us and future generations. They should use also evidence-based management rather than ideological stupidity to give us the few swim lanes that we need to not only let the markets do their thing. Do not get me wrong, markets are great, but when you have profit and the old shareholder value mentality, and I still believe that Friedman and people like Jack Welch and all their disciples, including CEOs of Boeing, have seriously poisoned capitalism to get to the situation we have today. You need swim lanes from benign governmental players. A good example, not perfect but great, is the EDB, the Economic Development Board in Singapore. They are state actors, and some of the smartest and long-term thinking people I have ever had the chance to interact with. It is humbling to see them work and how they set the swim lanes for their industries. Were they always right? Hell no. But they have a much better track record than nearly all Asian governments. What am I saying? All governments. Through proactive policies and collaborative initiatives, governments can significantly enhance industry's ability to withstand and quickly recover from various supply chain disruptions. And this does not mean that the German chancellor or economy minister or the US-American president invite for a day the leaders of a specific industry to have an automobile or semiconductor talk. It means detailed, painstaking exchanges on a working level between governments, on states and industry and academia. Again, evidence-based management.
In what ways can supply chains contribute positively to mitigating climate impacts?
Well, Scope 3, the ugly duckling in the governmental and super-governmental regulations, is responsible, as we know, for 60 to 90% of any company's greenhouse gas emissions. But instead of setting here the swim lanes and letting companies clean up their supply chain based on the powers of the market and the most powerful force in the business world, which is competition, Governments decided to create hundreds of regulations and laws that put companies on their scope 1 and 2 into corsets that you need a PhD nowadays to understand. Trust me on that. I'm doing my doctorate on greenhouse gas emissions and supply chain redesign, and what we have in terms of overburdening regulations and guidelines is a disgrace. Even more, in each of the largest emitting countries, the measuring and reporting of Scope 3 is only defined in its beginning. Taking the situation of climate and weather, the emergence of migration, the fascist tendency that go hand in hand with the electorate that is scared and misinformed, I find this view criminal for the good of our children and grandchildren. Supply chains, when managed with an eye towards sustainability, can be influential contributors to mitigate climate impacts. One innovative practice involves optimizing logistics to reduce carbon emissions. This can be achieved through route optimization, utilizing more efficient modes of transportation, and transitioning to electric and alternative fuel vehicles, or reshoring or friendshoring. We will spend a full podcast in this season on how to operationalize change in any supply chain to get to net zero by latest 2030. Yes, you heard me right. As I said so many times in my podcast, Scope 3 supply chains can be at net zero without playing any games of CO2 certificates and so on by 2030. Just hardcore competition and market forces. And since they carry the bulk of the greenhouse gas emission weight of each company, I leave it up to you to see the benefit for your company and your descendants by yourself.
How does consumer behavior influence supply chain management today?
Consumer behavior is increasingly influential, empowered by greater access to information, expectations for transparency and sustainability. Companies that actively seek consumer input alongside insights from other stakeholders are better positioned to adapt supply chain strategies that meet evolving demands. Collecting feedback from consumers not only guides product development and service offerings, but also shapes broader sustainability objectives. By integrating these consumer insights with data from other sources, like, again, academic research and shareholder input, companies can create a responsive supply chain that aligns with both market expectations and environmental responsibilities. Now, while this all sounds great, let's not forget that most of the customers of products sit not in Europe and USA, but in Asia, Africa, India, and the rest of the world. These customers are, by no fault of their own, less educated and often cannot afford the luxury of thinking about sustainability of the products they buy. They may just enter the lower middle class, can afford some of the goods and services that our grandparents could afford for the first time 50 to 70 years ago, and they behave equally as our parents and grandparents did. Here, their governments could help, but unfortunately, many of the countries with the poorest people as well have the more selfish and corrupt governments where sustainability and our climate have no place on their agenda. We will spend a whole episode in the next season, in January, discussing this in more detail, and I'm sure I will have a lot of irate comments after that one.
What future trends should supply chain leaders be prepared for?
As we look to the future, several trends reshape the landscape of supply chain management, requiring leaders to stay ahead of the curve. One significant trend we talked about already is the rise of digitalization and smart technologies. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and advanced predictive analytics will continue to revolutionize how supply chains work, providing unprecedented insights and efficiencies. If you look at the map called Modern Procurement Platform Stack by Dr. Eloise Epstein, who is a partner at Kearney, you will get a feel of what is out there. It's not a complete model. No model can be complete, but it is brilliant if you look for technology in a supply chain that is new and fresh. Global trade dynamics are also shifting, driven by geopolitical tensions, changes in trade policy, and regionalization trends. Supply chain leaders must be agile, ready to adapt to new trade agreements and tariffs, and explore strategies to mitigate potential disruptions. Again, this sounds so smooth, but what is it in reality? How many chief procurement officers or supply chain chiefs have an understanding of the ongoing changes in the tariffs, customs, and trade barriers of the goods they buy? Most of them are blissfully unaware of changes in tariffs and taxations that can make imported goods 100% more expensive from one day to the next. Exceptions exist in areas such as steel and chemicals, but overall, what an opportunity with modern technology to grasp, manage, and mitigate. Sustainability will remain paramount, with stricter environmental regulations and consumer demand for eco-friendly practices influencing supply chain strategies. And in those countries that have a democratic electorate, the pressure to the governance will be huge, which will lead to step function changes when the pressure is released in the selection of other parties. Only fascism will be the opium for the crowds and companies, since by default they will ignore science, as they always did. This is the reason why American politicians and their buddies in democratic, but especially dictatorial states negate climate change or COVID-19 or anything else that scares the electorate and is explained by science. They cultivate fear for these topics that they can handle and control and manipulate. Climate change and epidemics are clearly not on their menu. Lastly, the workforce of the future will influence supply chains with changing demographics and increased emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Leaders must foster adaptive and inclusive cultures to attain and attract top talent in a competitive landscape. Young people like to work for companies that have a high say-do ratio when it comes to ESG topics. I'm glad that they do today. I was happy just to get a job 40 years ago. Today, the young generation are in many aspects the adults. And us, the baby boomers, are, well, the adolescent generation living as if there would be no tomorrow. Well, maybe that is why we have the issues today.
What steps can listeners take to influence or participate in these changes?
Great question, because active participation from all stakeholders is crucial in driving meaningful change. Like always, for professionals within the supply chain industry, staying informed and continuously educating themselves on best practices and emerging technologies is vital. Engage in professional networks and forums to share knowledge and experience, and, again, do not be afraid to reach out for academia. Making informed choices is a powerful tool for, as well, citizens. Supporting companies that prioritize sustainable and ethical practices sends a clear message through market demand. Additionally, participating in community-based sustainability initiatives and advocating for policies that promote environmental and social welfare can amplify collective impact. People can also engage in dialogues about supply chain issues, raising awareness and encouraging others to consider the broader implications of their consumption choices. Ultimately, no matter how small, every action contributes to a larger movement towards more sustainable and resilient supply chains. I often hear the argument with my clients, what can we really do? And does it matter when it's so easy to wait and see and let others take the lead? I always then talk about the concept of cognitive dissonance. Organizations with cognitive dissonance have a tendency to resist change, create higher stress and anxiety in their employees, since they can see the difference between the messaging and the reality of the company, and finally, overall, hamper decision-making. Here, leadership tends to make decisions that reduces the dissonance, unfortunately often in the direction of financial rather than sustainability goals. By focusing just on the good old metrics and KPIs, dissonance in this instance is reduced, even if it has a negative impact on the sustainability targets of the company. Now, as mentioned, we will peel the onion on some of the topics further in subsequent podcasts. Here I offer you the academic knowledge that I had to gather anyway as part of my doctorate, which is right now accumulating to 1,200 academic articles and still counting, and make the bridge towards operationalizing what is known and how it can get done in the business world. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Supply Chain Dialogues. Please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or any other central podcast platform. And if you are a subscriber, tell someone who struggles with the implementation of their projects and tell them about this episode. If you're interested in learning more about this or other topics that we covered, you can sign up for online or face-to-face trainings, which is available on our company website and soon on YouTube. You can as well book a chat with me to explore the art of the possible for your company. We'll always find something through seminars, coaching, dialogues, or completing projects that help you. With that, stay safe, be bold, and see you in 2 weeks. These are the Supply Chain Dialogues, produced and copyrighted by Helmig Advisory in 2024.